Hi, everybody. So this week's book is A New House for Mouse. Peter Horachek. We'll just say it with confidence. Peter Horachek is the author, and we can point out that there's only one name on there. So what does that tell us? He is the author and the illustrator. So he's like super talented. He did both the writing and the pictures. You might also want to point out that it says that it's a peep through storybook. So you might ask them what they think that means, that it's a peep through storybook. And then you'll want to point out this is the cover. I don't think you've introduced this yet. Maybe you have. The spine, where we also see the title of the book and the author's name right here. As we look, we've got this is just called end paper. And then our title page obviously has the title on it with the name on it again. So far we don't have any peep throughs. But then as we're doing our picture walk, we can point out, and it might be hard for them to see as you're reading, but you can point out that this is actually a cutout. So as you go through the picture walk, you can have them start to make some predictions. If the story is A New House for Mouse, what do they think the story is going to be about? Obviously, mouse finding a house. So we have we've got, an apple over here, and mouse is looking out a hole. And it says, one day a little mouse looked out of the tiny hole where she lived and saw a huge apple. Goodness me, said little mouse. I would like that apple to eat. I must bring it inside. So here is our first problem. There is a small hole and a large apple. Do they think that this apple is going to fit into that hole? And if not, what do they think is going to happen? So there's a mouse here, and of course, as you do the picture walk, first I'm kind of combining both things right now for the sake of video time, but you would say, what do you think that the mouse is doing with that rope? That seems kind of odd. What do you think? Oh, you think that they're going to try to pull it? If you look really closely, you can see a stem right there. Do you think she's going to try to pull the apple through the hole? Maybe. So then you keep doing your picture walk, but although she tried and tried, she couldn't pull the apple through the tiny hole. My little house is too small, said little mouse. Perhaps I should look for a bigger one. So off she set. So where do you think she's going to look next for a house? If she's living here and she wants to move, what other places could she live? What do you think this is? It looks like maybe underground. So maybe she would try a tree trunk or wherever. So anyway, so here's our next peep through. We can show them that there's the hole right there. What is that? What do they think that is? Do you think the apple's going to fit in there? And what have you noticed about the apple? So, the apple has got a bite out of it now, and before it didn't have a bite. So she's starting to eat the apple. So she finds a hole here. And do you think that she's going to be able to fit that apple through the hole? Probably not, but she'll probably try and, talk about those things. So looking for a new house makes you hungry, said little mouse, as she took a few bites of the juicy apple. Then she spotted a hole that was just a little bigger than hers. This looks just right, she said as she peered inside. So this looks like maybe it's in a pile of leaves. They might think that this is like a molehill or an anthill. So she peeks in, and who's in that hole? What animal lives there already? Well, that is a mole. Some people might say a groundhog or a rat, but that's actually a mole, and he's living down there in that hole. And do you think that he's going to let Mouse live with him? And do you think that the apple's going to fit in that hole, and Mouse and Mole can live in the hole together? So you can talk about those things. So, hello, Mole, she said. I need a bigger house for me and my apple. Can I live here with you? I'm sorry, mumbled Mole, but my home is too full of books, and I don't think there's room for both of us. Perhaps not, said Little Mouse. I'll keep looking. So is Little Mouse going to be able to live in the hole? No, she didn't even get to try to see if her apple would fit in there, did she? Because the mole just told her no right off the bat. So, what other places do you think she could live? What other animals? And this is where, the kids will be shouting out, and that's okay. So they'll, oh, you think a rabbit hole, maybe a snake hole. Okay, what other animals live in holes? So try to get them to think about animals that live in holes. Chipmunks, maybe squirrels, other rodents of that nature. Okay, so here's our next hole, and it's hard to see again, so you'll have to kind of open it and point it out that there's a hole. And ask them, what did they notice about the apple? It's got, some bigger bites out of it now. So looks like she's creeping along here, and she found another hole. I wonder where that hole is. It's kind of hard to see, but it looks like maybe it's in some leaves and some weeds here near some water, maybe. So as she wandered, Little Mouse felt hungry. I'll just have a nibble, she said to herself, and talked to him about what is a nibble? Is a nibble a little bite or is a nibble a big bite? A nibble is just a little bite. Then she spotted a hole that was just a little bigger than Mole's. So then you can show them the difference between Mole's hole and this hole. It's a little bit bigger. That will be perfect, she said. She peered inside. What do you think she's going to see in that hole? So get them to start making some predictions. And what is it? It's a rabbit. Hello, Rabbit, she said. I'm looking for a bigger house for me and my apple. Can I live here with you? What do you think Rabbit's going to say? Mole said no. Do you think Rabbit's going to be nicer? Or do you think Rabbit's going to be mean? So, get some predictions and expand them if they say nice. Oh, you think Rabbit is nicer than Mole, or mean. Oh, you think Rabbit and Mole are both mean. All right, well, let's see what happens. Can I live here with you? I'm sorry, twittered Rabbit, but my home is too full of cabbages, and I don't think there's room for both of us. Perhaps not, said Little Mouse. So you can talk about what cabbages are, and that it looks sort of like lettuce, and you use it, you eat it in coleslaw. You can ask them if anybody likes cabbage. So she can't live with Mole, and she can't live with Rabbit. What other animals might she go see? Get some, again, they'll be yelling out some answers. So she set off again, and she finds another hole. And this one looks like it's in the ground again. But she was still hungry, so she nibbled on the apple as she went. So now the apple's getting more bites out of it. So all these little nibbles are starting to add up, because now we can see the seeds in the apple. So she spotted another hole that's just a little bigger than Rabbit's. That'll be just right, she said. She peered inside. So who's living in that one? And do you think that the apple would fit in there? Looks like it certainly would. Just let's see if there's a friendly animal or an unfriendly animal. Oh, anybody know what that animal is? It's kind of hard to tell because you don't see his tail. But that is a badger. So what do you think Mouse is going to ask Badger? Yeah, he's probably going to ask, can I live with you? So she'll say, Badger, can I live in the house with you? And what do you think Badger's going to say? Mole was mean, Rabbit's mean. Looks like there's a lot of mean animals in this book, so it's probably going to say no. Let's find out. Hello, Badger, she said. I'm looking for a bigger house for me and my apple. Can I come and live with you? I'm sorry, barked Badger, but I stretch out on my cushions all day, snoring a lot, and I don't think there's room for both of us. Perhaps not, said Little Mouse, feeling rather weary and still hungry. So you can talk about what does it mean to be weary. She's pretty tired. Why is she tired? She's been looking for a house this whole time. So she's tired and she's still hungry because she hasn't eaten too much. She's just been nibbling on that apple. She hasn't eaten a whole lot. And Badger couldn't let Mouse live with him because he doesn't have any room because he's stretching out on his cushions all day. Do you remember why Rabbit couldn't? Yeah, she was all full of cabbage. Her home was. And what about Mole? Yeah, Mole's was all full of books. So they all have an excuse. An excuse is like a reason why Mouse can't live with them. So let's see what Mouse is going to do next. Do you think she's just going to give up? No, she's probably going to look for another hole. So let's see what she finds now. All right, so she comes up with this big hole here. Look at that. Looks like it's in the side of a hill. And I bet her apple will certainly fit in that hole, even though now, look at, she has both sides of it eaten. And you know what, as I'm saying this, I hear myself saying this. I'm saying, look it. You should have them like self-discover some of this. What do you notice about this apple? Not look at right here. Just what do you notice about this apple? Oh yeah, you notice that there's bite marks out of both sides of it. What do you notice about the sky? It's getting darker. And what do you think this might be? Yeah, the moon's coming out. So you want to be careful about how you phrase your questions so that you're phrasing them for self-discovery instead of I'm telling you what to notice. So I've been doing a bad job about that, sorry. So that evening she came across an enormous hole. Well, what does enormous mean? Do you think that means little or do you think that means big? It means huge, big. So she says, this must be big enough for me and my apple, she thought. Hello, is anybody there? She shouted. And you can also point out, I would wait till later on in the week to point this out, but the text changes and it becomes a bigger font. And so you can talk about how that's how you know that she was yelling it, because it was a bigger font than the rest of the text, the words on the page. So who do they think lives in this hole? It's got to be a big animal. So what big animal might live in a hole? It's got to be bigger than a badger. It's got to be bigger than a rabbit. It's got to be bigger than a mole. Ooh, what is that? That is a big bear. So the big bear says, hello, little mouse, growled a huge bear. Why don't you come and live here with me? No, thank you, squeaked Little Mouse. I think the cave is a bit too small for you and me and my apple. And off she ran. So, do you think that it really is too small for Mouse and Apple to live with Bear? Or do you think there was another reason that she said no? And kind of guide them into figuring out that, well, she was probably scared of Bear, and that is why she doesn't want to live there. There was room. She could have lived right there, but she was afraid, and so she ran off. So you can say, again, you notice the bigger font, so the bigger writing, so he's going to have a bigger voice than Little Bear or Little Mouse. And what does that mean that she squeaked? Voice got really squeaky like this, and his was growling. So you can talk about the difference between growling and squeaking, and you can even kind of think about what if Bear squeaked and Mouse growled. How would that change the story? Later on in the week, though. Let them get the regular story down before you start changing it. All right, so then we come back to this page and we've got a small hole here. And what do you notice about this apple? Looks like it's been eaten all the way around. What do you notice about the time of day it is? It's now nighttime, so this has been all day. Little Mouse has been looking for a house, and Little Mouse was tired now. But pulling the apple seemed easier. Well, why do you think pulling that apple around was easier? Well, yeah, because there's less of it. She's eaten it. Suddenly she saw a tiny hole. That looks perfect, she squeaked. I wonder who lives here. She peered inside. Now, she was told no by so many animals, and the one animal that did want her to live there, she was afraid of. So what do you think's going to happen now? Is it going to be a mean one? Is it going to be a nice one? So I'm going to make those predictions. And there was no one at home. Little Mouse went right in and pulled her apple behind her. So now that it was small, it fit into the hole. It fit perfectly. I knew I would find somewhere just right for both me and my apple, she said. And she climbed into her own bed and fell fast asleep. So you can see if they would remember from the very beginning what her room looked like. And she had that green bed, and you can see the green bed again there, and that's the orange pot right there, and the blue and white bedding. So see if they can remember, well, whose house do you think this is? Does it look familiar? Did you see this green bed anywhere else in the story? So try to get them to come back around to the thinking that she found her own house. And now, why can she live there? Well, now that the apple is small, it fits into the little hole. Before, when the apple was huge, it didn't fit in the hole. So if she finds another apple tomorrow outside, does she have to go on this whole hunt again? Or what else could she do? So something she could do is she could, go out, eat the apple, keep eating it, and then when it was small enough, bring it inside. That way she doesn't have to find a new house. And then more end paper. All right, so that was a really brief, quick run through of A New House for Mouse by Peter Horachek. Thank you.